In the labyrinth of marriage, even after years of companionship, doubts sometimes linger, casting shadows on the solidity of the bond. Seeking reassurance. One wife embarked on a misguided mission to test her husband's devotion, only to find herself ensnared in a tangled web of confusion and fear. Their union, once brimming with shared laughter and whispered promises, began to falter as the subtle nuances of distance crept in. Convinced that her husband's affection had waned, the wife concocted a plan to unveil his true sentiments. Crafting an intricate ruse woven from the fabric of their shared history, she hoped to decipher his unspoken truths. But as the pieces of her scheme fell into place, so too did the unsettling questions haunting her mind. Was his aloof demeanor a veil for infidelity? Or did hidden demons lurk beneath the surface, threatening to fracture their bond irreparably? Determined to unearth the answers, the wife penned a letter, laying bare the intricacies of their relationship in search of clarity. Love still beat fiercely in her heart, yet the need for validation overshadowed all else. With trembling hands, she penned the final lines, a desperate plea for liberation from uncertainty. Placing the letter atop their shared sanctuary, she retreated into the shadows, awaiting the moment of truth. But fate, in its cruel irony, had other plans. As she lay in wait beneath the bed, her heart pounding in anticipation, the echoes of her own vulnerability reverberated in the silence. In her pursuit of truth, she had unwittingly become ensnared in her own trap. And as the footsteps of her beloved drew near, she realized that some questions were better left unanswered, lest they shatter the fragile facade of love. In the end, it was not her husband's reaction that revealed the depths of his affection, but rather the painful realization that trust, once broken, is not easily mended. In the labyrinth of her mind, the wife grappled with doubt, convinced that only a drastic measure could unveil the truth of her husband's feelings. Would he see through her facade? Discerning the deceit woven into her desperate plan, with trembling hands, she scripted a note laden with raw honesty, a last-ditch effort to provoke a response from her reticent partner. Placing it delicately on their shared bed, she retreated beneath, consumed by a tumult of anticipation and fear. When the moments stretched into eternity, doubts gnawed at her resolve. Was this truly the path to clarity? Or merely a reckless gamble with their fragile bond? With bated breath, she awaited his return, heart pounding in sync with the approaching footsteps. But when he finally entered the room and laid eyes on the note, her world shattered in silence. Expecting tears of remorse, she instead heard the chilling sound of laughter, followed by the casual dialing of a number. Panic gripped her when she listened to his cavalier declaration, a dagger to her already wounded heart. In stunned disbelief, she realized the depth of his betrayal, the callous ease with which he dismissed their love. As he vanished from the room, leaving behind a void she could scarcely comprehend, she braced herself for the storm of emotions to come. In that moment of profound revelation, she understood that some truths are too painful to bear, and that the shattered remnants of their marriage would forever haunt her wounded soul. As tears blurred her vision beneath the bed, the wife grappled with the unsettling revelation that her husband had confided in another. Was it a clandestine mistress or a trusted friend? The truth, when revealed, would prove stranger than fiction. Her heart heavy with disappointment, she had hoped for a visceral display of emotion from her husband, a testament to the depth of his love. Yet his callous laughter shattered her illusions, leaving her to bear the weight of shattered dreams alone. With a heavy heart, she emerged from her hiding place, confronting the harsh reality of her fractured marriage. The specter of infidelity loomed large, casting a shadow over her already shattered world. When she surveyed the remnants of their once shared life, her gaze fell upon a note nestled beside her own. With trembling hands, she reached for it, steeling herself for the final blow. The words "Dear wife" stared back at her, a cruel reminder of the love that had once flourished between them. But as her eyes scanned the page, she found herself unable to read further, the pain too raw to bear. In those few sentences, she knew lay the culmination of her husband's betrayal, a stark confirmation of his desire to sever their ties. And when she grappled with the harsh truth, she realized that rebuilding her life would require more strength than she ever imagined. With trembling hands, she unfolded the note, bracing herself for the final blow. But what she read left her stunned. Dear wife, Next time you try to trick me into proving my love, make sure your feet aren't sticking out from underneath the bed." The words struck her with a mixture of embarrassment and amusement. Despite her meticulously planned prank, she had overlooked a crucial detail, exposing herself to her husband's playful scrutiny. In that moment, she realized the depth of his lightheartedness, a quality essential for weathering the storms of marriage. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, she understood the folly of her actions. Her husband's phone call, his laughter, it had all been part of the ruse. But amidst the laughter and the tears, a valuable lesson emerged. She had learned that true intimacy is born not from deceit, but from honesty and vulnerability. And as they navigated the aftermath of her ill-conceived prank, their bond grew stronger, fortified by a newfound appreciation for open communication and trust. In the end, her misguided attempt at testing their love had inadvertently strengthened their relationship, serving as a reminder that sometimes the simplest gestures hold the deepest meaning. And when they moved forward, hand in hand, they vowed to cherish each other, not through elaborate schemes, but through the simple act of being true to themselves and each other. After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's watch another similar story. In the middle of Sunny's cafe's morning rush, an off-duty police officer named Ethan Hayes found himself surrounded by the comforting scent of bacon and freshly brewed coffee. His enthusiasm at finally reaching the counter began to dwindle as he stood patiently in line. Instead of greeting him with the usual friendliness, Sarah, the cashier, flat out refused to service him. Sarah was unmoved and refused to provide a reason for her rejection, no matter how many times he tried to negotiate with her. When Ethan grew more and more agitated, he sought answers, and the once lively cafe environment appeared to dissolve into tension. The employees, however, responded to his questions with scorn and even laughing. Ethan was faced with accusations and additional humiliation instead of understanding from manager Miss Jenkins. Ethan stood firm in the face of contempt and apathy, struggling with a range of feelings including shame, rage, and a deep sense of unfairness. At Sunny's cafe, Ethan Hayes witnessed the sudden decline of civility, which exposed him to the ebb and flow of human contact. Motivated by a blend of surprise and resolve, he would not blend in with the monotony of daily rituals. Everyone from customers to employees was captivated by his unfaltering posture, which made him the center of an ever-increasing spectacle. When Ethan anxiously awaited an answer, the formerly lively cafe became tense and tensely charged with an air of hostility. Unexpectedly thrust into the role of a game-changer questioning established customer service dynamics, he approached the impasse with determination. The cafe's opposition to his inquiries was only strengthened by the appearance of manager Miss Jenkins. Miss Jenkins quickly sided with Sarah, accusing Ethan of causing needless chaos, her demeanor as icy as the floor. Her presence did little to alleviate the tense atmosphere of miscommunication and disagreement, rather, it made matters worse. Ethan tried to clear the air, but instead he was mocked and his statements were turned into baseless allegations. Ethan was cast as the unintentional antagonist in a story he had no hand in crafting. As the staff's cackles served as a bitter chorus that emphasized how strange his expulsion from the cafe had been, Ethan was taken aback by the sudden and unpleasant realization, the indifference to serving him, the condescending tone, and the laughter that he was the object of. There was no misunderstanding, rather. Ethan's dignity, which he had subtly upheld while not wearing his uniform, was being trampled on in the sake of keeping the peace in the cafe. His resolve and awareness of their disrespect grew stronger with each breath as the air around him thickened with mounting wrath and shame. This incident, which took place against the backdrop of Sunny's cafe, became a symbol of how vulnerable people are when they are no longer seen as having any kind of power. A silent protest against the casual brutality that lurks in everyday interactions was personified by Ethan, who stood alone yet was apparent to everyone. Returning to Sunny's cafe at daybreak, he exuded power in his police uniform, distinguishing him from the rest of the crowd. There was an air of tangible tension when he entered the room because the fabric of his clothing seemed to change the script of the meeting. The air prickled with a sudden cognizance of his status when he traversed the familiar territory. The once apathetic employees now paced with apprehensive vitality, their expressions reflecting a blend of familiarity and fear. When Sarah, the cashier who had turned him down the day before, realized who Ethan was, her smile turned to terror. Her metamorphosis was a quiet witness to the abrupt shift in the cafe's power dynamics. And it spoke loudly. Ethan sought a meeting with Miss Jennings the day before, his demeanor conveying composed authority, despite his lack of self-assurance. The workers, who had been unconcerned about his request earlier, were now eager to fulfill it, highlighting the dramatic change in attitude he experienced in just one day. The cafe was silent while he waited, the customary commotion drowned out by the mounting tension. By drawing attention away from the abuses of the day before, Ethan exposed the underlying social attitudes towards ignorant authority. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as Miss Jennings made her entrance, marking a change in the power dynamic between them. No longer could Ethan be disregarded, his previously unheard grievance now demanded consideration. In sharp contrast to the ridicule he had endured, his statements were met with a grave gravity. Formal politeness with an undercurrent of discomfort defined this interaction, which exposed the power and respect dynamics at work in the cafe's social fabric. The impact of a uniform on human interactions was brought to light by Ethan's return to Sunny's cafe, which shed light on the intricate relationship between authority, cultural conceptions, and identity. As the dawn broke on the digital horizon, Ethan Hayes' meeting set the virtual world ablaze with public commentary. The story's explosive growth, propelled by indignation and shock, reached well beyond the immediate area and resonated with people all around the country. His private tragedy became a public spectacle as people shared, discussed, and argued the ramifications of Ethan's abuse on social media. Amidst all this chaos, the diner salesperson bravely admitted error, which is quite unusual. A defining event in the developing drama was their recognition, which shone like a lighthouse amidst the turbulent ocean of online talk. However, Ethan's speech stood out as a soothing voice amidst the raging fury that demanded harsh punishment for Sunny's cafe. Based on his experiences on both sides of the power dynamic, Ethan favored empathy and productive discourse above harsh punishment. Some members of the internet community responded positively to his plea for development, which demonstrated his faith in the transformative power of progress. But beyond the scope of that one eatery, the episode had shown systemic, deeper problems. The subtleties of prejudice, discrimination, and bias based on perceived power or status were brought into sharp focus. In light of the public outcry, numerous conversations broke out, exploring the underlying social issues that enabled these inequities to persist and forcing readers to face the harsh realities of their own prejudices and preconceptions. In response to Ethan's cautious approach, Sunny's Cafe has promised to study and improve its customer service procedures in order to prevent discrimination in the future. This promise was a stride towards healing, but it also demonstrated how Ethan's story had a greater influence on the collective awareness of the town. The event's effects went beyond first reactions, sparking discussions about the nature of human connections and encouraging self-reflection. Not only did it inspire change at Sunny's Cafe, but it also moved the people who followed Ethan's tale. Despite the fact that the initial outcry died down, the episode served as a lasting reminder of the community's never-ending fight for tolerance, acceptance, and equality. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, let's watch another similar story. When Dino struggled to come to terms with the unexpected betrayal, his pulse raced rapidly within his chest. It seems incomprehensible that she would be so heartless as to break his heart. In the past, he had envisioned a future with her, during which he had ambitions of getting married and having children. Soon after, the first feeling of melancholy transformed into a raging wrath. He made plans for his vengeance, and he was adamant that she would be forced to face the consequences without any prior warning or pity. Working on the rough oil rigs required a high level of toughness and competence, both of which Dino has in abundance due to his experience. In his line of work, formal education was not necessary, but experience was absolutely necessary. Dino's ability to think quickly and pay close attention to detail made him an invaluable member of his firm. Dino gave the impression of having everything he desired from the outside, including a secure employment, a cozy home, and devoted friends. Despite the fact that he appeared to be successful, he longed for genuine connection and a warmth that he had been unable to find in matters pertaining to the heart. Unbeknownst to him, the subsequent woman who would enter his life would pose a severe threat to the entirety of his existence. Dino yearned for a more profound connection, in contrast to his co-workers, who frequently pursued transient romantic relationships. When it counted the most, he was decisive. Despite the fact that was his patience. Subsequently, Andrea made her entrance into his life, entrancing him with her celebrity-like beauty. Her appearance gave the impression that she was the solution to his desire for love at first glimpse. It is possible that Andrea's stunning beauty would have been featured on the cover of Vogue, which would have left Dino's co-workers in awe of his significant other. Despite the fact that many of his friends were overjoyed about his connection with Andrea. Some, such as his friend Josh, were suspicious of the situation. While Dino was blinded by love, Josh was able to see that Andrea was a self-centered attention seeker. However, Dino was unable to see the storm that was rising on the horizon. The beginning of their relationship was fruitful, and Andrea was looking forward to moving into Dino's flat with great anticipation. Their bliss, on the other hand, started to show signs of cracking. The stories that Andrea told about her turbulent childhood, which was defined by the divorce of her parents, occasionally brought to light her tendency to be self-centered. The trusting and sympathetic Dino ignored these warning flags and continued on with his day. Nevertheless, when Dino labored away on the oil rig, signals that were troubling began to appear. Exorbitant grocery bills and cash withdrawals that could not be explained were discovered on the bank statements that received, which were strange. Dino's intuition was tinged with a sense of distrust. Did Andrea take advantage of his generosity for her personal benefit? What are the chances that she is unfaithful, betraying him not just financially but also emotionally? Dino faced the idea that Andrea had been unfaithful to him with a terrible heaviness in his heart. In an effort to get to the bottom of things, he came up with a strategy. When he unexpectedly returned home, he happened across a terrible scenario, which caused their relationship to become even more tumultuous. There were secrets that Andrea hadn't anticipated being revealed so quickly, and her surprise at his early return was a hint at those secrets. The sight that greeted Dino when he entered the house that he had meticulously constructed caused his heart to sink when he took his first steps inside. This reinforced his greatest concerns, which were that the lady he had previously imagined spending the rest of his life with was betraying him. He was able to keep his composure in spite of the devastating information that was revealed. He gave the other man the order to leave in a calm and firm manner. And then he turned to Andrea and offered her the key to a hotel room, the cab fare, and $50, urging her to leave. However, Andrea's unwillingness to leave turned into a chaotic situation. With her alternating between emotional apologies and vicious curses, she was unable to leave. In the end, Dino was left with no other option but to notify the authorities, which ultimately resulted in Andrea being removed from his residence. It is important to note that Andrea's vindictiveness did not end with the conclusion of their turbulent relationship. Due to the fact that she was deprived of the conveniences to which she had become accustomed, she felt animosity towards Dino. Not only did she target his condo, but she also targeted his white Chevrolet Monte Carlo, which she considered to be his most valued item as well. Weeks later, when Dino returned from another stint on the oil rig, he discovered that his cherished automobile had been vandalized. The tires had been cut, the windscreen had been cracked, and the surface of the vehicle had been covered with red paint. While Dino's companions debated about who was responsible for the crime, Dino was aware of the reality. A wound to his pride and delight that cannot be forgiven was the act of vengeance that Andrea committed. In spite of the fact that he was tempted to strike back right away, Dino decided to exercise patience and wait for the ideal opportunity to strike once it presented itself. With unwavering determination, he went back to his routine, appearing to be untouched by the turbulence that was developing beneath the surface. Dino did not feel any emotions of forgiveness or forgetfulness towards Andrea because of the betrayal she had committed. His patience paid off as he waited for a moment to strike back, making certain that she would never forget the misery that she had given him. The moment he learned that Andrea was about to get married, he noticed that this was the ideal opportunity for him to exact his revenge. Dino was able to know about the engagement thanks to his buddy Nancy, who was familiar with the legitimate Andrea. After gaining an awareness of Andrea's actual nature, Nancy joined his co-conspirator in the process of plotting to damage Andrea's wedding day. Their partnership was spurred by Nancy's wrath at Andrea's betrayal of Dino, which ensured that what should have been Andrea's happiest moment turned out to be her worst nightmare. Dino's act of retribution began with an anonymous letter that was delivered to Andrea 1 month before to the wedding festivities. A picture of his vandalized Monte Carlo, a bridal dress, and a packet of ketchup were all included in the letter, which also included the enigmatic statement red on white. Andrea became aware that Dino had not forgotten or forgiven her. And she understood that punishment was quickly approaching. This was a clear warning. Dino decided to take advantage of another opportunity to harass Andrea by using the insider information that Nancy had provided. Dino, armed with the knowledge about the wedding store where Andrea was purchasing her gown, was able to convince the proprietor of the business to participate in their scheme for a sum of $100. In a phone conversation, the proprietor informed Andrea that her fiancé had requested that the dress be trimmed with red lace. With Andrea's urgent arrival at the business, she was able to validate her suspicions of sabotage, despite the fact that she was fully aware of the individuals responsible for it. Andrea's concern over her upcoming wedding day increased when she became aware that the likelihood of her clean white dress becoming stained crimson was not merely a possibility but rather a looming certainty. This realization caused her anxiety to intensify. She was on edge, anticipating various forms of sabotage at every turn. As the event was growing closer and closer, to further agitate Andrea's anxiety, Dino, who is known for his patience and strategic thinking, waited until just a few weeks before the wedding. Andrea was thrown into a frenzy after Nancy made a remark about a putative buddy of Dino's who worked for the catering firm, because she was concerned that the pasta dishes or salads that contained tomatoes would be tampered with. She made hurried changes to the menu order. Dino, however, was not yet finished. He organized a series of pranks that were not overt but were nonetheless mentally torturous. Andrea's doorstep was greeted with a mysterious delivery of 30 distinct red lipsticks, each of which was purchased from a different Amazon vendor and paid for with prepaid credit cards that could not be traced. An additional unsettling element that acted as a reminder of his presence was a red Sharpie that was deliberately placed under her windscreen wipers. The day of the wedding was drawing near, and Andrea's paranoia reached its highest point. She was so overcome by the fear of being taken advantage of that she insisted that all of the red flowers be removed from the centerpieces and that she would not approach anyone who was holding a red drink. Because Nancy kept him updated throughout the night, Dino was able to take pleasure in Andrea's unraveling, despite the fact that he had a rather passive role in the actual events. Andrea was revealed to be an unstable and demanding bridezilla in front of her loved ones, despite the fact that she had been maintaining a mask of composure earlier, instead of her outfit. Her reputation was tarnished as a result of the unfolding events of the evening. Andrea was finally forced to confront the repercussions of her own anxiety and insecurity as a result of Dino's retribution, which was both subtle and heartbreaking. After watching the stories above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.